Sometimes, a video's worth 1,000 words. Other times, a mugshot can be more telling.
There is something incredibly disturbing about this story.
I've literally been crying about this for like 5 minutes already.
When a gap in the law leaves an innocent child in the clutches of an alleged monster,
he was able to get away with this because him and his husband used a surrogate.
the internet isn't just asking the hard questions, but demanding action.
One of the parents is a registered offender. So I don't know what kind of loophole that they went through to get these rights to this child. However, it needs to be stripped immediately.
On the surface, it looked like a Hallmark moment. At least, that's the impression a number of viewers walked away with after watching this compilation of two fathers blowing out a candle and kissing their baby boy on the cheeks every month until he reached his 1-year birthday.
If you've been online in the last couple of days, there's a really good chance you've seen the video of these two men circulating with this child that they had via surrogacy.
Just a few days ago, they made a very sweet video documenting the baby's 1-year-old birthday.
Watching this couple celebrate milestones with their baby, it's cute, right?
However, for some, even the choice to set the TikTok to Taylor Swift's Never Grow Up wasn't enough to tug at the heartstrings. Yes, as a gay couple, Brandon Keith Riley Mitchell and his husband, Logan Stephen Riley, faced the typical backlash when their video went viral in July. Namely, comments that their marriage was an abomination and that their baby was somehow worse off because of the sexuality of his parents. Or, as a tweet with over 37,000 likes read, "Unless a miracle happens, this child has almost no chance at a normal life." Still, a portion of the internet jumped to the defense of the new fathers. "I don't have a dad. This baby has 2. Consider himself lucky." Imagine seeing a loving family and saying this. You are the type of people who would make that child's life hard. It makes me happy, and it doesn't bother me. I see a baby being loved by 2 fathers. This wasn't the only time internet users lended their support to Brandon and Logan. See, it wasn't an easy journey to fatherhood, especially with the couple choosing to have a child through the pricey path of surrogacy. So, Brandon and Logan chose to crowdsource money for a surrogate through GoFundMe. Their mission was stated plain and simple in the title of their fundraiser. They were raising money to expand their family. And with a photo of the 2 hopeful fathers, holding hands in matching polka dot button-downs and pink and blue shorts, looking about as harmless as 2 people could, who wouldn't want to help them achieve their dream? In total, the GoFundMe raised over $2,000, about 4% of their $50,000 goal for an IVF procedure. And at the time, donors clearly believed their money was going to a worthy cause. One user, who donated $50, commented, "So happy for you both as you continue this journey." Another supporter wrote that they could not imagine a better family for a baby. Meanwhile, Brandon and Logan remained as transparent as possible, or so it seemed. Yes, viewers likely had no clue the dark details the couple was keeping offline. Once the baby is born, the intended parents, Brandon and I, would have full legal custody, Logan wrote on the page, a statement that would soon be more of a cause for concern than celebration. On November 3rd, 2023, Brandon and Logan posted an update that a family friend had agreed to carry their child. Our surrogate went through extensive medical and social worker evaluations in order to be approved for surrogacy, they assured their supporters. Once approved, the lengthy legal and financial process began. Post ended with an optimistic sign-off: future fathers, Logan and Brandon. As their viral TikTok made clear, that dream came true. But was this a happy ending, or a nightmare that was only just beginning? After all, if this was supposed to be a positive development, what had social media users making statements like this?
It is sickening. It is f***ing disgusting.
And this?
I hope this baby is not going to be with this couple any longer.
Or, for example, this.
We need to stop protecting these sickos, and we need to do what's right by our kids.
One thing was for certain. It was no longer Brandon and Logan's sexuality that was fueling outrage. This time, it was something from Brandon's past. Something sinister. From community notes to Facebook posts, the couple's viral video had gone from touching to stomach-turning, with the circulation of a single photo. Brandon Keith Riley Mitchell's mugshot.
One of the men that you just watched kiss that baby, which is officially their adopted child, is a registered offender.
Yes, Brandon was on a list of people in Pennsylvania who supposedly had no business being around children, let alone having them through surrogacy. Of course, people end up on the registry for all sorts of reasons that don't necessarily make them a dangerous person, such as public urination or streaking. Brandon, however, was not one of these cases. According to the Chester County District Attorney's Office, the new father was guilty of child SA and possession of explicit content involving a child. And the details of his crime were just as alarming as the charges. Brandon was in his late 20s, working as a chemistry teacher at Downingtown West High School in Pennsylvania. It was 2013, the year that the boundaries between the teacher and one of his students began to dangerously blur. Yes, from May 2013 to December 2014, Brandon engaged in some seriously unteacherly conversations with a 16-year-old over text. Over the course of their correspondence, the two exchanged over 12,000 text messages, including inappropriate videos and images of both the victim and the teacher. Texts exposed that Brandon had not only asked the student to send him this explicit content, but told him he wanted to see him engage in self-gratification, and also suggested that the student perform an adult act on him when he graduated. As the grown-up in the situation, Brandon knew what he was doing was wrong, evidenced by him sending a text to the student telling him to delete their exchanges. Despite this, law enforcement was still able to recover messages from Brandon's phone and laptop in 2016. During the investigation, Brandon was suspended from his teaching position and later resigned after working at the school for 6 years. Prior to working at Downingtown West High School, Brandon worked at 2 other schools. Perhaps more concerningly, he was also an assistant scoutmaster for the Boy Scouts of America and worked at a children's theme park in Pennsylvania.
Only at Dutch Wonderland. Then, now and forever, a kingdom for kids.
But Brandon's days as a trusted adult were now over. Following his convictions of child SA and possession of explicit content involving a child, Brandon served a 3-month prison sentence followed by probation. He was also ordered to have no unsupervised content with minors. Naturally, his teaching license was revoked. His husband, Logan, however, is reportedly a 2nd grade teacher, something that concerns those who see him as guilty by association.
A Maryland 2nd grade teacher. 2nd grade teacher.
But since Mitchell completed his parole in 2021 and hasn't violated any conditions or faced any other criminal charges or allegations, that makes both him and his husband perfectly eligible for the role of father figures, at least as far as the state of Pennsylvania is concerned. Currently, the same questions are being echoed across the internet.
How was Brandon Mitchell, a registered offender, able to get a child?
How did this couple get the rights to raise this baby?
How did this slip through the cracks?
How, why, and who is responsible for allowing this to go ahead?
It all amounts to one deafening chorus. How could this happen? Well, while it's illegal for a registered SO to adopt or foster a child, it turns out there's nothing under Pennsylvania law that prohibits someone on the registry from having a child through surrogacy. That's right, while Brandon and Logan's surrogate had to go through extensive medical and social worker evaluations to carry their child, when it came to deciding whether Brandon was fit to be a father, the state seemed unbothered. And nothing infuriated the internet more.
There was nothing that could stop this guy from adopting this baby through this process. This guy was charged with some absolutely horrific stuff, and the fact that just less than a decade later, he's already out on the street, able to adopt a child through surrogacy, is incredibly alarming and deeply disturbing.
And everybody's going off on Epstein this and Epstein that, but there are everyday people just like this who are able to exploit the system, then gaslight you and me to say it's okay for them to adopt a child.
I'm convinced that we all died in like 2020, and this is hell, because there is no way that a literal a registered offending has gotten his hands on a newborn baby.
Amid the overwhelming disgust for the parents, a stronger emotion spread online. Fear. Yes, from prayers.
Pray that God removes this child away from this man. In the name of Jesus, y'all.
To calls for action.
We need to figure out if there's something we can do as citizens to get this baby out of danger.
It's clear that the child's safety was the internet's primary concern.
And I wonder, is this child safe?
Is he a risk to this baby? That's not my field. But to me, my personal opinion, the risk isn't zero.
This baby is in danger every day that he is in this household.
And if the state wasn't going to protect Brandon and Logan's child, the public would take the first steps. A petition demanding the baby's removal from the couple's custody and an end to what they call the dangerous legal loophole that allows registered SOs to receive surrogacy access has received over 17,000 signatures on change.org. The public is outraged, and we are demanding immediate action, the petition reads. Child safety must come before adult privilege. If Pennsylvania does not act now, more will exploit this system. We will not remain silent while children are handed over to known abusers. The urgency for officials to act now is likely intensified by a recent verdict that showcased the deeply disturbing consequences that come when children aren't protected. Last December, a Georgia couple pleaded guilty to the unthinkable, SAing their 2 adopted sons. The 2 men were exposed after a defendant in another case accused William and Zachary Zulock of sending them explicit content involving the 2 boys. This tip led investigators to what District Attorney Randy McGinley would later describe as a house of horrors that proved the fathers put their extremely dark desires above everything and everyone. In the end, their sentence reflected the severity of their crimes: 100 years in prison without parole. But would Brandon Keith Mitchell and his husband face any consequences? After all, according to Pennsylvania law, having a baby through a surrogate appeared to be perfectly legal. Well, it turns out that depends on the circumstances of the adoption. Generally, people who conceive through surrogacy apply for a pre-birth order, which makes them the child's legal guardians. The other option is to adopt the child and go through background checks, where Brandon's criminal record would surface. According to Stuart Sachs, a surrogacy and adoption attorney who spoke with the Philadelphia Inquirer, he couldn't form an opinion on Brandon and Logan's rights without knowing whether they supplied DNA for their child. If Brandon is the genetic parent, that's maybe where the loophole comes in, the attorney told the publication. But even if there was a way to fully ban people like Brandon from surrogacy, not everyone agrees this is the right thing to do. As one Reddit user pointed out, if an SO has a natural childbirth, they're supposed to have a judicial hearing to determine custody and visitation. Generally, they won't be able to have unsupervised visitation with their child, ever. I don't know why that process can't be just applied here, too. Banning surrogacy in this instance is a bad solution to a real problem. Another user speculated that this overreaction was an attempt to villainize the gay men, adding, "You have the correct and logical take. Let the court decide what this person should do and be capable of after paying their debt to society." Yes, while these users seem to unanimously agree that Brandon wasn't a good person, for them, something bigger was at stake: our rights. If you care about civil liberties at all, you should be really hesitant about the government seeking even more power over people's reproductive rights. Yes, I realize he should never have a child, but the idea that a crime punished by less than a year's incarceration could result in a permanent government ban on among the most personal decisions an adult can make is too much state power over the individual. And then there were those who were still publicly defending Brandon. which at this point seemed to only include his attorney. When speaking with TMZ, Peter E. Kratza emphasized that there was no allegation of physical contact in his client's name. On top of that, he added that Brandon immediately accepted responsibility for his conduct, served his sentence without incident, and engaged in extensive counseling. Brandon did nothing illegal or unethical in becoming a surrogate parent. He was completely transparent, the attorney told TMZ. Perhaps the attention of those decrying his parenthood would be more appropriately directed toward those who are not held accountable for CA, are not punished, and make no efforts at rehabilitation. It's worth noting that Brandon was categorized as a Tier 1 SO, meaning prosecutors believed he had a low risk of reoffending. But for many, there was no rehabilitation for what Brandon was at his core. Former SO? No, you're an SO for life. There is no cure for that shit. And internet users continue to come forward to demand change.
It's not about attacking same-sex couples. It's not about any of that. It's about protecting children from predators. And we have no legislation when it comes to this loophole that does that.
The outcry has captured the attention of state officials. Tim Barker, the district attorney for York County, Pennsylvania, told TMZ that the controversy has put a spotlight on the legal loophole and that this is an issue ripe for review and remedy by our Pennsylvania legislature, adding, "I have full confidence that our York County state senators and representatives will vigorously pursue any constitutionally permissible legislative actions that serve to protect children from harm, and enthusiastically stand ready to assist our York County delegation at their request on this issue. And change could be coming soon." One TikToker who allegedly called the state senator's office and spoke to a legislative staffer claimed,
"They are currently drafting legislation to close the loophole on surrogacy without proper background checks."
As for how this would impact Brandon and Logan's parental rights, the TikToker added,
"On top of this, they are working on ensuring the safety of that poor innocent child."
What this involves remains unknown. However, it does appear that legislative changes are in the works. Pennsylvania State Representative Aaron Bernstein has voiced his plan to introduce legislation that would make it illegal for registered SOs to have children through surrogacy. Aaron's proposed bill would make background checks and CA clearances mandatory for any parents opting to conceive through surrogacy. "This is about protecting kids, period," said Bernstein. "The safeguards in place for adopting children should also protect those children born through surrogacy." According to Bernstein, he has bipartisan support for the legislation and expects it to pass in September. Both Republican and Democrat state representatives have voiced their agreement. They need to protect children from dangerous and predatory individuals through stricter regulations. But sources that spoke with TMZ say these changes likely won't force Brandon and Logan to give up their child. They will, however, prevent this from ever happening again. So, in the end, the public's outrage.
We need to toughen up the laws against offenders. We need to make it to where they don't reoffend. Not that they don't reoffend, but they can't reoffend.
Has seemingly paved the way to real change.
No longer will registered offenders be able to obtain children.
That's the power of social media. Speaking of which, while you're here, check out our video on another scandal social media users are desperately trying to call attention to. A health drink that allegedly has customers fighting for their lives. And consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. Your support means a lot to us and helps us continue to create videos like these.